Broken heart on my wedding day, the happiest day of my life turned into the darkest night I could ever imagine. My white dress was still shining, my veil still covering my tears of joy, when the news hit me like thunder. Your husband has been in an accident. He's in a coma. Those words kept ringing in my ears like a bell I could not silence. Instead of holding his hands at our first dance, I was holding his lifeless fingers in the hospital, praying for a miracle. 2 years. 2 whole years I sat by his side. 2 years I remained faithful, even though loneliness ate deep into me. My heart ached every night, my body longed for him. But I refused to betray the vows I made before God and man. Then the miracle happened. He opened his eyes. My knees hit the hospital floor as I cried out, "Thank you, Lord." But what came next shattered me more than the accident itself. He looked at me with suspicion in his eyes, and the first words out of his lips were not, "I love you," or "Where am I?" Instead, they were, "Did you stay faithful? Or did you find another man while I was gone?" My heart froze. After everything I endured, after every tear, after every lonely night, I was standing on trial in the eyes of the man I almost died waiting for. And in that moment, I realized my real battle had only just begun. But before I tell you how that day broke me, let me start from the beginning, so you can truly understand the storm I walked through. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I am 68 years old, speaking to you right now from Dallas, Texas. And before I dive deeper into my story, I want to ask you, my dear viewers, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss the rest of this journey. And also, tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching me from? I'd love to know. Now let me take you back to the day it all began, the day that was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. The sun was shining so brightly that morning, as if heaven itself was smiling at me. My friends had come to the house early, carrying makeup kits, curling irons, and laughter that filled every corner. I remember looking in the mirror and almost not recognizing myself. The girl who once wore jeans and ponytails was now a bride, dressed in flowing white, with her heart set on forever. My husband, David. Oh, David was the kind of man that every woman dreamt of, but only a few were blessed to have. Tall, strong, gentle with words, yet firm with decisions. When he proposed to me, I felt like the most cherished woman alive. So you can imagine the excitement that bubbled in me as I walked down that church aisle, with family and friends cheering and clapping. "Till death do us part," he whispered as he slid the ring on my finger. And my heart whispered back, "Forever." But forever didn't even last a day. We had just finished saying our vows, and people were still pouring rice and flowers over our heads as we stepped out of the church. There was laughter, music, and joy. I remember my mother dancing so much that her scarf fell off her head. We were meant to drive together to the reception, but David said he needed to quickly pick something from his best man's car parked a few blocks away. That was the last time I saw him smiling. Minutes later, chaos erupted. A scream pierced the air, followed by shouts. I turned and saw people running. A car had skidded out of control, ramming into another vehicle, and in that wreck was my husband. I remember my feet refusing to move, my whole body freezing until someone screamed, "It's David. He's not moving." I ran. Oh, I ran like my life depended on it, but when I reached him, his body was twisted, his face bleeding, his eyes closed. My white dress turned red as I tried to hold him, shaking, screaming his name, begging him to stay with me. They rushed him to the hospital, and doctors fought with every skill they had. But after hours of waiting, I was told, "He's alive, but he's in a coma." And just like that, my wedding day ended not in a honeymoon, but in a hospital ward, sitting on a cold chair, holding the hand of a man who could no longer hold mine. The weeks turned into months, and months into years. People told me to move on, that I was still young, that I could find someone else. But I refused. Every morning, I went to that hospital. Every night I prayed. I read to him, I sang to him. I told him about my day, even though he never answered. Some nights, I cried so much that my pillow was soaked. Loneliness whispered in my ear, tempting me to give in, but I fought it. Because love is not just about joy, it is about sacrifice. And I was willing to sacrifice everything for him. Then after 2 years of endless waiting, he opened his eyes. My world lit up again. My prayers had been answered. But little did I know that my greatest pain was still ahead of me, because the first thing he asked me when he could finally speak again was not about love, but about betrayal. And right there in that hospital room, I felt my world collapse all over again. But that was only the beginning of my heartbreak, because what David did next nearly destroyed me forever. When David accused me of betraying him, my heart split into 1,000 pieces. I had imagined our reunion so many times, him smiling weakly, holding my hand, whispering, "I missed you." Instead, I found myself defending my faithfulness like a criminal in court. "David," I said softly, tears burning in my eyes, "I never left your side. For 2 years I was here. Ask the nurses, ask the doctors, I never left you. Why would you think I betrayed you?" But his eyes, once warm and tender, were filled with doubt. "2 years is a long time, Maggie. Do you expect me to believe you didn't look for comfort elsewhere?" His voice was weak from the coma, but his suspicion stabbed deeper than any knife. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to remind him of our vows, but instead I swallowed the pain and whispered, "I loved you enough to die waiting for you." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. I thought maybe he would soften, maybe he would believe me. But then, something happened that shattered me further. He turned his face away from me. He refused to hold my hand. And then he said the words that still haunt me till today. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore." Those words sank deep into me like poison. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. After everything, after years of loyalty, he was doubting me. The doctors came in and asked me to step outside so they could run some tests. As I walked out of that room, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. That night, I sat alone in the hospital corridor. The smell of antiseptics, the sound of beeping machines, the footsteps of nurses. It all felt suffocating. I closed my eyes and remembered our wedding day, the promises, the laughter, the dancing, only to open them again and see myself drowning in despair. For a while, things seemed to get better. As David slowly recovered, I told myself to be patient. Trauma does strange things to the mind, I reasoned. Maybe he would heal, not just in body but in trust too. I cooked his favorite meals. I read him his favorite books. I held his hand even when he tried to pull away. But one evening, as I walked into his hospital room, I froze. There was another woman sitting by his bed. She was holding his hand, smiling at him, and whispering something that made his lips curve in a faint smile. For 2 years I had prayed to see that smile again, and now he was giving it to someone else. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. David looked at me coldly. "She's a friend. She was there for me in ways you could never understand." I blinked confused. "In ways I could never understand?" "David, I was here every single day. I was the one who never left." The woman stood, brushing her hair back with a smug smile. "Sometimes love isn't about presence. It's about connection." Her words burned me. My fists clenched, my body shook, but before I could speak, David said something that turned my world upside down. "Maggie, I think I want her to stay." Right there in that hospital room, on the very bed where I prayed him back to life, my husband chose another woman's company over mine. I stood frozen, my wedding ring suddenly heavy on my finger. And in that moment I realized the accident had stolen not just 2 years of my marriage. It had stolen my husband's heart too. But what he did next was even worse. When David said he wanted her to stay, my knees almost gave way beneath me. My mind screamed, "This is not happening. This cannot be real." I had stood by him for 2 years, sacrificing my own happiness, and now another woman was sitting in the very place I had bled my heart dry to keep warm. "David," my voice cracked. "After everything, you would do this to me?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, he reached for her hand again, gripping it weakly, but with a tenderness I had longed to see directed at me. "I don't know who you were while I was gone," he muttered. "But she visited me too. She prayed for me. She talked to me. I felt her presence, even in my coma." I shook my head in disbelief. Felt her presence? "David, I was here every single day. Every single day. I talked to you. I prayed for you. I held your hand until mine went numb. Don't you dare tell me she was there more than I was." But he only sighed, as if my words were nothing but noise. The woman gave me a look. Smug, almost victorious. And in that look I knew. She wasn't just a visitor. She was someone who had managed to slip into his heart while mine was breaking. I left the room that night with my heart heavy, my wedding vows echoing in my head. For better or worse, I had said. But this was worse than worse. For the next few weeks, I still visited him. I brought food, helped the nurses, kept my duties as his wife. But each time I entered, she was there. Sometimes she would leave when I arrived. Sometimes she wouldn't. And David, he grew colder toward me, while warmer toward her. One afternoon my breaking point came. I walked in and saw her feeding him soup, her laughter filling the room. And then I heard it. David calling her by a name that once belonged to me. Sweetheart. That word hit me like a gunshot. I dropped the food I brought. The tray clattered on the floor, the sound echoing through the hospital walls. Both of them looked at me, but David didn't even flinch. Maggie, he said firmly. You need to stop coming here so often. You're overwhelming me. Overwhelming you? I whispered, my voice trembling with rage and sorrow. I sacrificed everything for you, and now I'm overwhelming you? The woman touched his shoulder gently, as if shielding him from me. And then David said the words that broke me beyond repair. Maggie, maybe you should give me space. Maybe we rushed into marriage. Maybe I made a mistake. My chest tightened. My wedding ring burned against my skin. I felt the room spinning as the nurses rushed in to calm things down. I stumbled out of the hospital, tears blinding me, my heart shattering into pieces too small to ever put back together. But the real blow came days later. Because one morning, when I returned to the hospital determined to fight for my marriage, I was told David had signed documents restricting who could visit him. And my name was not on the list. When the nurse told me I was no longer allowed to see David, my heart stopped beating for a moment. What do you mean I can't see my husband? I demanded, my voice shaking. The nurse avoided my eyes, her hands fiddling with the papers. I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker. But Mr. Parker has decided to restrict his visitors. Only approved names can enter. And yours isn't on the list. I laughed bitterly, thinking it was some cruel mistake. That's impossible. I'm his wife. How can my name not be there? But she slid the paper toward me, and I saw it with my own eyes. 3 names. His parents. His best friend. And her. Not me. Not the woman who spent 2 years keeping his memory alive. Not the wife who gave up her youth for him. I stood frozen in that hallway, people passing me by. Yet I felt like the whole world had stopped spinning. That night, I went home to our empty bed. The sheets smelled of him, but they were cold. My arms searched for him out of habit, but there was nothing. And for the first time in 2 years, the silence of my house screamed louder than the beeping machines of the hospital. Days passed. I still went to the hospital, begging the nurses, pleading with the doctors, trying to see him. Sometimes I even waited in the parking lot, just to catch a glimpse of him being wheeled outside for therapy. But each time, I saw her by his side, not me. She held his hand, she pushed his wheelchair, she whispered in his ear. And me? I became a shadow of a wife. A ghost haunting the corridors of a love story that no longer wanted me. People in town began to whisper. Some said I had failed him. Others said maybe he had woken up to realize he never loved me at all. The gossip was poison, but worse than gossip was the loneliness that crept into my bones. One night, I sat in my living room staring at my wedding pictures. His smile. My veil. The joy that once filled our eyes. I pressed the photo frame to my chest and sobbed until there were no tears left. But then anger began to rise. I told myself, no. I will not let her take what I bled for. I am his wife, not her. He belongs with me. So I made a decision. The next day, I dressed up. Not in my worn-out clothes, not in the face of a broken woman, but in the strength of the wife he had chosen. I painted my lips, straightened my hair, and walked into that hospital like I owned the ground. The receptionist stopped me. Ma'am, you're not on the list. I looked her in the eye and said, I am his wife. No paper in this world can erase that. If you want to stop me, call the police. But I am walking into my husband's room. And I pushed past her. My heart thundered in my chest as I walked down that hallway. Every step felt like a war cry. I opened the door to his room, and there they were. David, sitting up in bed, holding her hand, and kissing her, right before my eyes. My scream tore through the room before I even knew it left my lips. David jerked back, his eyes wide, while she smirked, wiping her lips with her finger. And that was the moment I realized. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting against betrayal that had already begun. The moment my eyes saw David's lips on hers, something inside me died. My knees went weak, my chest tightened, and I grabbed the edge of the doorframe just to keep myself standing. David. My voice was hoarse, broken, trembling. How could you? He froze, his face pale. For a second, I thought I saw guilt flash across his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Instead, he looked away from me, as though I was the intruder. The woman, her name was Claire, leaned back casually, her arms still around him. She smirked, that same poisonous smirk I had seen before, and said softly, "Maybe you shouldn't be here, Maggie. Clearly you walked in at the wrong time." Her voice cut through me like glass. David finally spoke, his tone cold, distant, like I was nothing more than a stranger. "Maggie, I told you before, I need space. You can't keep barging in like this. It's not good for me." "Not good for you?" I snapped, my tears spilling freely now. I wasted 2 years of my life in this hospital, praying, fasting, begging God to bring you back to me. And this is how you thank me? By kissing another woman in front of me? My words bounced off the walls, but his face remained hard. "I didn't ask you to wait for me," he said flatly. That single sentence felt like a knife straight to my soul. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "David, you swore before God. You swore before my family, before yours. You told me forever." He didn't answer. Claire stood and gently touched his shoulder. "You need rest. Don't stress yourself." She turned to me with a sly smile. "Maybe you should let go, Maggie. He's not the same man you married." Her words stung. But worse was the way David let her speak for him. He didn't defend me. He didn't push her away. He just sat there, silent, as though my existence no longer mattered. I ran out of the hospital, tears blinding me. The cold air hit my face as I gasped for breath, my whole body trembling. That night, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. My heart screamed questions. Why? What did I do wrong? Wasn't my love enough? Days turned into weeks, and I didn't go back. I couldn't bear the sight of him with her. Yet deep inside I still loved him. I hated him for what he was doing, but I couldn't turn off the love that had grown in me for years. Love is cruel like that. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received a letter. It wasn't from David. It wasn't from the hospital. It was from a lawyer. The letter stated clearly, "David Parker has filed for divorce." I dropped it on the floor, my hands shaking, my eyes wide. My body went numb as the reality hit me. Not only had he kissed another woman, he wanted to end our marriage entirely. The divorce papers sat on my table like a death sentence. I must have read them 100 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Loss of trust. Irreconcilable differences. My name, written in black ink, beside the man I once thought I would die beside. I crumpled the paper in my hands and fell to the floor, sobbing like a child. My cries filled the house, echoing against the walls of a home that once held laughter and love. How could he do this? After everything? After 2 years of sacrifice, after fighting loneliness, after keeping myself pure for him? Instead of a thank you, he gave me betrayal. Instead of love, he gave me rejection. Instead of forever, he gave me divorce. Word spread fast in town. People whispered behind my back at the grocery store, at church, even at the salon. Some pitied me. Others mocked me. I heard one woman say, maybe he realized she wasn't enough for him. Another muttered, poor Maggie, she wasted her years for nothing. Every word was like fire on my skin. But worse than the gossip was the silence of my own heart. I was still in love with him, even as he tore me apart. The day of the divorce hearing came. I walked into that courtroom with my head held high, though my knees were shaking. David sat on the other side with Claire beside him. She wore a sleek black dress, her lips curved into that same smug smile, as though she had already won. David didn't even look at me. The judge read the papers, asked the questions, stamped the documents. And just like that, 10 minutes later, my marriage was over. I remember staring at the ring on my finger, twisting it slowly, feeling the weight of its betrayal. When I finally slid it off, it felt like my finger itself was being torn away. After court, I walked out into the cold air. Claire was standing there, her hand hooked around David's arm. She leaned close to me and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "You wasted 2 years of your life, Maggie. But don't worry, I'll give him what you couldn't." I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap her. I wanted to remind her that she was stealing a man whose heart had once been mine. But all I could do was walk away, my pride shattered, my soul bruised. For weeks, I locked myself inside my house. I barely ate, barely spoke, barely lived. Depression swallowed me whole. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the broken woman staring back. But one evening, a knock came at my door. I opened it, and there stood someone I least expected. David's younger brother, Michael. He looked at me with eyes full of pity and concern. "Maggie," he said softly, "I heard what happened. And I can't just sit back and watch. You don't deserve this. You don't deserve what my brother has done to you." And then he said words that stunned me to my core. "I will take care of you. If David doesn't see your worth, then I will." When Michael said those words, "If David doesn't see your worth, then I will," I froze at my doorway. I stared at him, unable to speak. My mind spun in circles. This was David's younger brother. The man who had stood beside him at our wedding. The man who had watched me sit by his hospital bed for 2 years. And now he was standing in front of me, offering me the love my husband had thrown away. "Michael," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You don't know what you're saying." But he stepped closer, his eyes soft, steady. "I know exactly what I'm saying, Maggie. I saw you suffer. I saw you break down. I saw how you gave everything to him and he gave you nothing back. He doesn't deserve you. But his voice cracked. "I would never treat you that way." Tears filled my eyes. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to shut out the temptation, to scream that it was wrong. But another part, the broken, wounded part, longed for someone to finally see my pain. "Michael," I said shakily, "I can't, you're his brother." He nodded slowly. "I know. But I'm also a man. A man who can't stand seeing you in pain anymore." That night after he left, I sat in darkness, my mind battling itself. Was it betrayal to even consider his words? Or was it justice for the years I had lost, the vows David had shattered? Days turned into weeks and Michael kept coming. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with flowers, sometimes just to sit with me in silence so I wouldn't feel alone. Slowly, the walls I had built around my heart began to crack. One evening after dinner, he looked at me and said softly, "Maggie, I love you. I have loved you in silence for years, even before David. But now I can't keep it hidden anymore." My fork fell from my hand. My chest tightened. His words thundered in my ears. "You loved me before David?" I whispered. He nodded. "I stayed silent because he was my brother. But now, seeing how he has treated you, I can't keep quiet. I won't let you waste away alone." Tears rolled down my cheeks. My heart ached with confusion, but also with something I hadn't felt in so long, being wanted, being seen, being loved. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. For the first time since the accident, I felt a flicker of warmth inside me, but with it came guilt. Was it wrong to even let my heart lean toward Michael? Was I betraying my vows? Or had David already destroyed them the day he kissed another woman? I didn't have an answer. But before I could even decide what to do with Michael's confession, another storm came crashing into my life. Because one morning I received a phone call. It was David. And with a voice colder than ice he said, "Maggie, I'm getting married again. To Claire." When David's voice came through the phone that morning, my heart sank like a stone. "I'm getting married again. To Claire." Those words echoed in my ears long after he hung up. My hands trembled, the phone slipping from my grip and clattering to the floor. My knees buckled beneath me as I collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. 2 years of faithfulness. 2 years of sacrifice. 2 years of waiting, praying, loving. And now he was erasing it all with a single wedding. Claire hadn't just stolen my husband's trust. She had stolen his name, his heart. And now, she was about to steal the vows that once belonged to me. For days I was numb. I barely ate. I barely moved. My world felt like it had ended twice. First when he accused me, and now, when he replaced me. Michael noticed. He came by one evening with food and sat beside me in silence. After a long while he spoke gently. "Maggie, I know you're hurting. But maybe this is God's way of showing you he was never meant for you." I shook my head, tears filling my eyes. But he was my husband, Michael. I gave him everything. And now he's giving everything to her. Michael touched my hand, his eyes firm but tender. "Then let him go. Because while he's throwing you away, I see you. I choose you." His words pierced through me. A warmth spread in my chest. A warmth I hadn't felt since before the accident. But along with it came guilt. How could I let myself feel for him while my heart still bled for David? Weeks passed and the wedding day drew closer. Invitations went out. The town buzzed with gossip. Some people pitied me, others mocked me. But all eyes were on the spectacle of David marrying the woman he had chosen over his own wife. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up with swollen eyes from crying all night. I told myself I wouldn't go. I told myself it would break me to see him give the vows he once gave me. But something inside me snapped. I needed closure. I needed to see it with my own eyes, even if it tore me apart. So I went. I walked into that church dressed in black, as though attending a funeral, because in my heart, that was exactly what it was. The burial of my marriage. Whispers filled the room as people turned to look at me. Some gasped. Some smirked. Claire's bridesmaids sneered. And then my eyes met David's at the altar. For a moment his expression faltered. I saw something flicker in his eyes, shock, maybe guilt. But then just as quickly it was gone. The ceremony began. Claire walked down the aisle, radiant in her gown, her smile victorious. I sat at the back, my fists clenched, my nails digging into my palms. Every word from the priest cut me deeper. For better or worse in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Words he had once said to me. And then, just as David was about to place the ring on Claire's finger, a voice thundered across the church. "Stop this wedding." Gasps filled the room. Everyone turned. It was Michael. "Stop this wedding." The church fell silent, gasps echoing like thunder. Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire, and all eyes fell on Michael as he stood tall at the back of the church, his voice firm and unshaking. Claire froze mid-step, her smug smile vanishing. David's face darkened, his jaw tightening as he glared at his brother. Michael walked slowly down the aisle, his eyes locked on David. "You can't do this," he said firmly. "You can't stand here and vow forever to her when you already broke the forever you promised to Maggie." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Some nodded, others gasped in shock. David's voice thundered. "Michael, this is none of your business." Michael's face hardened. "It is my business. Because I watched Maggie sit by your side for 2 years while you lay in a coma. I saw her cry herself to sleep. I saw her fight loneliness, mockery, and despair just to stay faithful to you. And this is how you repay her? By spitting on her love. By marrying the woman who crept into your life when she was most vulnerable." The church erupted with noise, some clapping, some shouting, some whispering furiously. Claire's face turned red, and she tugged at David's arm. "Don't listen to him. He's jealous. He's always been jealous." Michael ignored her, his eyes burning into David's. "You think this marriage will give you happiness? No. It will only bury your shame deeper. Because everyone here knows Maggie's love was pure. Everyone here knows she was faithful. And you," his voice cracked with emotion, "you threw her away for this woman." My heart pounded in my chest as I sat in the back pew, my hands trembling. Never in my life had I felt so exposed, so vulnerable, and yet so defended. For the first time, someone was standing up for me. David's face twisted with rage. "Get out, Michael. Get out before I have you thrown out." But Michael didn't move. Instead, He turned and looked directly at me. His eyes softened, his voice lowering but carrying through the silence. Maggie, you don't have to stay silent anymore. You don't have to let him humiliate you. If he won't fight for you, I will. Because I love you. I always have. The church gasped again. Claire let out a loud scoff, covering her mouth in fake disbelief. David's fists clenched, his entire body shaking with fury. Michael, he roared. You dare say that here? In my wedding? To my wife? Michael stepped forward, his voice steady as stone. She was your wife. You divorced her. You betrayed her. You lost her. And if you think you can erase her suffering and walk away without consequence, you're wrong. The room was in chaos now. Guests shouting, the priest frozen in shock, bridesmaids whispering frantically. I sat there, my breath caught in my throat, unsure if I was dreaming or living through the most terrifying moment of my life. David stormed down the aisle, his face red with rage, and stood nose to nose with Michael. Get out. Now. Michael didn't budge. And then, before anyone could stop him, David drew back his hand and slapped his own brother across the face. The sound cracked through the church like thunder. Gasps erupted. People leapt to their feet. Claire clutched her dress dramatically, screaming, "Stop this madness!" Michael staggered but didn't fall. He straightened, his cheek burning red, and looked David dead in the eyes. If that's the only way you know how to defend your shame, then so be it. But remember this, David, he pointed at me, his voice breaking. One day, you will realize you threw away the only woman who ever truly loved you. The church was in uproar. And me? I sat there, frozen, torn between two brothers, my world spinning out of control. But just as the chaos peaked, Claire screamed, her face twisting in fury, and she shouted words that silenced the entire church. Stop defending her, Michael. You have no right, because you and I were together once too. Stop defending her, Michael. You have no right, because you and I were together once too. The words rang out like a gunshot. The church went dead silent. Every whisper, every gasp, every shuffle of feet froze in midair. My heart dropped into my stomach. What did she just say? Michael's face went pale. He stared at Claire as if she had ripped open a secret he had buried deep. Claire, don't, he whispered, his voice breaking. But it was too late. The crowd erupted in chaos. People stood from their seats, whispering, shouting, gasping. Some turned to me with pity, others with judgment. I felt my body tremble as my knees threatened to give way. My chest heaved, my breath shallow. Michael and Claire? My husband's brother. And the woman who stole him from me? David's face twisted into pure rage. His eyes burned into Michael's. Is it true? He demanded, his voice shaking with fury. Tell me right now, Michael. Did you sleep with her? Michael's hands shook at his sides. He opened his mouth but no words came out. His silence was louder than any confession. David lunged at him, fists flying, and the church turned into a battlefield. Guests screamed, the priest shouted for order. But David and Michael were locked in a violent struggle. Two brothers tearing each other apart in front of God and everyone. I screamed their names but my voice was lost in the chaos. Claire stood back, her arms folded, her eyes gleaming with twisted satisfaction. Now you see, David? Your perfect brother isn't so perfect. He wanted me long before you knew it. The crowd gasped again, shock rippling through the pews. Some women clutched their pearls, others covered their children's ears. David struck Michael hard, sending him staggering into the altar. You betrayed me, he roared, his face red with fury. Michael wiped the blood from his lip, his eyes blazing. I never loved her, David. Don't you see? She's using us. She's using both of us. The only person I ever truly loved was Maggie. Every head in the room turned toward me. The whispers grew louder, harsher. Some eyes judged me, others pitied me. My face burned as though the weight of the entire world was pressing down on me. David's chest heaved, his fists clenched. His voice shook with fury and heartbreak as he turned toward me. You knew, didn't you? He shouted. You knew he wanted you. All this time, Maggie, all this time was I a fool? Did you love him while I lay in a coma? The room went silent again, all eyes drilling into me. I stood there frozen, tears spilling down my face, my lips trembling.
David, no.
I never betrayed you. Not once. I loved only you. But he didn't believe me. His eyes, filled with pain and rage, narrowed as he spoke the words that shattered me beyond repair. Get out of my life, Maggie. You are dead to me. And with that he turned back to Claire and kissed her. Right there. On the altar. In front of the priest. In front of his family. In front of me. The church gasped, some crying out in shock, others turning away in disgust. I stood frozen, my body trembling, my heart screaming. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't just the end of my marriage. This was the end of everything I thought I knew about love. The sound of David's lips pressing against Claire's echoed in my ears like a death knell. My breath hitched, my knees buckled, and the room spun around me. I couldn't hear the gasps, the shouts, or the whispers anymore. All I could hear was the deafening shatter of my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Michael rushed toward me, his hand outstretched, his eyes wide with fear. Maggie, please don't believe him. Don't let his anger destroy you. I know the truth, I saw your faithfulness. But I pulled away. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't even stand to look at either of them. David, the man I had given my vows, and Michael, the man now tangled in this web of betrayal and love. I staggered toward the church doors, the murmurs of the guests following me like shadows. Poor woman. Imagine her pain. But did she really stay faithful? The whispers cut deeper than any knife. When I finally burst out of the church, the sunlight felt cruel, almost mocking. The sky was so bright. Yet my world was darker than it had ever been. I collapsed on the church steps, clutching my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. My veil was torn, my dress stained with tears, and my heart was gone. Michael followed me outside, kneeling beside me. His voice trembled as he spoke. Maggie, I'm sorry. I never should have let it come to this. I never should have let her use my weakness against me. I looked at him through blurry eyes, my voice hoarse. Why, Michael? Why did you let yourself get close to her? Why did you let her do this to us? His shoulders sagged, his face heavy with guilt. I was weak, lonely. For a moment, I thought I could escape my feelings for you by distracting myself with her. But I never loved her. Not the way He stopped, biting his lip, unable to finish. I shook my head, the pain too deep to allow his words in. You ruined everything. You gave her the weapon she needed to destroy me. Before he could respond, the church doors opened again. David and Claire stepped out, hand in hand, their faces brazen as if the shame belonged to me and not them. Claire smirked, her voice dripping with venom. Well, I guess the world knows the truth now. You weren't enough, Maggie. You never were. David's eyes, cold and unforgiving, pierced into me. Go back to whatever life you were living while I was gone. Because I don't want you in mine anymore. The words gutted me. My entire body went numb. But then something unexpected happened. The crowd of wedding guests began to turn. Not against me, but against them. Murmurs of disgust rose. Some guests shook their heads. Others walked away in shame, refusing to be part of such ugliness. Even the priest looked at David with disappointment and sorrow. For the first time I realized. Maybe I wasn't the one who had lost. Maybe they were. Still, I walked away, trembling, broken, and unsure of what tomorrow would bring. But deep inside, a small, fragile voice whispered to me. This is not the end of your story, Maggie. It's only the beginning. And as I stepped off the church grounds, tears staining my face, I had no idea that the darkest storm was still ahead, because later that night, someone knocked on my door, and when I opened it, I came face to face with the last person I ever expected to see. The knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant, but it sent a jolt of fear racing through me. My heart pounded as I wiped my swollen eyes and forced myself to open it. When the door creaked wide, I froze. Standing there was Claire. She was no longer smug, no longer wearing her cruel smirk. Her makeup was smeared, her hair messy, her eyes red from crying. She looked nothing like the triumphant woman who had stolen my husband only hours before. What do you want? I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. She bit her lip, her hands twisting together. For the first time, she looked nervous. Maggie, please. Let me in. I need to talk to you. I almost slammed the door in her face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was the faint, broken sound in her voice that hinted she wasn't here to gloat. Reluctantly, I stepped aside. She walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. But her shoulders hunched like she carried the weight of the world. The silence between us was sharp, heavy, suffocating. Finally, I broke it. "You've destroyed me, Claire. What more could you possibly want?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. She clasped her hands together and whispered, "Maggie, you don't understand. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you like this." I laughed bitterly. "You kissed my husband on our wedding day and told the world I was unfaithful. You call that not hurting me?" She flinched at my words, then whispered, "I did it because I'm pregnant." My heart stopped. The room tilted. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself, staring at her in disbelief. "Pregnant?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "With David's baby." The words slammed into me like a hammer. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and I felt my whole world collapse around me again. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, this can't be real. You're lying. You're lying just to hurt me more." Claire dropped to her knees in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably. "I wish I was lying, Maggie. I wish I was. But it's true. And I don't know what to do." My body trembled violently, my breath shallow. David's betrayal had cut deep enough. But this was a knife straight through my soul. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her out. I wanted to collapse and never get up again. But before I could do any of those things, the front door swung open. And there stood David. His eyes went wide as he saw us. Claire on her knees, me standing in shock, tears streaming down both our faces. And in that moment, I knew something explosive was about to happen. David's eyes locked on Claire first, then darted to me. His face twisted with fury, confusion, and disbelief all at once. "What is going on here?" His voice was thunderous, shaking the silence of the room. Claire scrambled to her feet, her tears spilling freely. "David, I had to tell her. She deserves to know." His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. "You had no right. None." I stared at him, my body trembling, my voice barely holding together. "So it's true? Claire is pregnant with your child." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. David's eyes flickered, his chest rising and falling heavily. For a moment, I thought he would deny it. I prayed he would deny it. But then he spoke. Yes. The word cut through me like a blade. My knees buckled, and I collapsed into the chair behind me. The room spun. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my chest. Claire reached for his arm, desperate. "David, please. Don't be angry with me. I only told her because I thought." He yanked his arm away, his voice a roar. "You thought what? That this would make things better? That destroying her would somehow fix what we've done?" Tears streamed down my face as I looked at the two of them. The man I had loved with all my soul, and the woman who had ripped my world apart. "You betrayed me," I whispered. "On the very day that should have been the happiest of our lives. I stayed by your side for 2 years while you lay in a coma. 2 years of loneliness, of tears, of faithfulness. And this is how you repay me." David's face twisted with guilt, but instead of comforting me, his anger turned back on Claire. "You shouldn't have told her. Do you see what you've done? You've ruined everything." Claire sobbed harder, dropping her face into her hands. I stood shakily, my legs trembling under me. But my voice rose with a strength I didn't know I had. "No, David. She didn't ruin everything. You did. With your lies. With your weakness. With your betrayal." The room went deathly quiet. David's face hardened, his eyes cold as ice. "If you think I'll choose you over my child, Maggie, you're wrong." The words hit me like a final blow. I gasped, clutching my chest, the weight of his decision crushing me. My world shattered yet again, only this time it was final. David turned, grabbed Claire's wrist, and stormed out of my house, leaving me in the ruins of the love I had fought so hard to protect. I collapsed to the floor, sobbing until there were no tears left. And as the night stretched on, one truth became painfully clear to me. Sometimes love isn't stolen by another woman. Sometimes it's destroyed by the very person you trusted most. But as broken as I didn't yet know my story was far from over, because in the shadows of my heartbreak, someone else was waiting, and their arrival would change everything. The house was silent after David stormed out with Claire, but inside me, there was nothing but noise. My chest ached with every breath, my tears burned as they rolled down my face. I lay curled on the floor, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, how could he do this? After everything I sacrificed? After everything I endured? The minutes dragged like hours. The night was endless. And then another knock on the door. I froze, my heart racing. I wanted to ignore it, but the knock came again, firm but gentle. With shaky legs, I dragged myself up and opened the door. It wasn't David. It wasn't Claire. It was Michael. He stood there, his eyes full of concern, his hands clutching a bag of groceries. Maggie, I heard what happened. Everyone in town is talking. I came as fast as I could. At the sight of him, my walls crumbled. I broke into sobs and collapsed against his chest. He held me tightly, his arms strong and steady, whispering softly, "It's okay. I've got you. You're not alone." For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. He carried the groceries inside, set them on the counter, and then sat with me. I told him everything. Claire's confession, David's admission, the cruel words that shattered me. Through it all, Michael's hand never left mine. When I finished, I whispered bitterly, "Do you see now? I've lost everything. My husband, my marriage, my dignity. What am I supposed to do now?" Michael looked at me with steady eyes. "You start over. You rebuild. You remember that your worth isn't tied to a man who couldn't see your loyalty. Maggie, you deserve love, the real kind. Not betrayal. Not lies. Real love." His words sank into me like seeds in dry soil. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was life after this heartbreak. But before I could answer, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded letter. "I wasn't sure if I should give this to you," he said, his voice low. "But I found it among David's things while helping him at the hospital weeks ago. I didn't want to cause you more pain then, but now you deserve to know." My breath caught. My hand shook as I unfolded the paper. It wasn't just any letter. It was a confession, in David's own handwriting. And what it revealed was darker than anything I had imagined. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the letter. The paper felt heavier than stone, and with every word my eyes traced, my chest grew tighter. The letter began with David's handwriting, shaky and uneven. "If anyone finds this, I need to tell the truth. Claire's child may not be mine. During the time Maggie stayed faithful to me while I was in the coma, I wasn't as loyal as I should have been before the accident. I had secrets. I made mistakes. And one of them might destroy everything." My stomach twisted. My heart pounded so hard it felt like thunder in my ears. The letter went on to explain how, months before our wedding, David had been secretly seeing Claire. Their affair hadn't just started on the day of my wedding. It had been going on long before. He admitted that Claire had threatened to expose him unless he left me, and the pressure of his guilt had consumed him. Tears blurred my vision as I read the final lines. "Maggie deserves better than me. I don't deserve her loyalty, her love, or her forgiveness. If she ever finds this, I hope she knows that none of this is her fault. It's mine. All of it." The paper slipped from my hands and fluttered to the floor. My whole body shook. The betrayal was deeper than I had ever imagined. It hadn't been a moment of weakness, it had been years of lies. Michael gently picked up the letter and set it on the table. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with anger. "You see, Maggie? You gave him everything, your faithfulness, your patience, your love. And he threw it all away long before his accident. This isn't about you not being enough. This is about him never being worthy of you." I buried my face in my hands, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. For 2 years, I had tortured myself with loneliness, believing that maybe my husband's doubts about me were my fault. But now I saw the truth. I had been faithful. I had been loyal. I had loved with all my heart. And he had betrayed me before I even said, "I do." Michael's voice softened as he placed a hand on my shoulder. "Maggie, I know this hurts. But sometimes life takes away what you think you can't live without. so it can give you something better. You are stronger than this pain. And I'll stand by you as long as you need me to. I looked at him through my tears, and for the first time, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could rebuild. As I closed my eyes that night, I realized something important. Love isn't proven by words, or promises, or even weddings. Love is proven by actions, by loyalty, by truth. And if someone cannot honor that, then losing them isn't really a loss, it's freedom. Broken heart life lesson for you watching right now. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever loved someone who didn't love you the same way, remember this: your value is not measured by the way someone treats you. Your value is in your faithfulness, your heart, your strength. Do not let betrayal make you forget your worth. For weeks after reading David's confession, I moved like a shadow through my own house. The walls felt colder, the rooms emptier. I had spent years believing my greatest sorrow was the coma, the waiting, the loneliness. But the truth, that he had already betrayed me long before, cut far deeper. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Georgia sky, Michael joined me. He brought sweet tea and sat quietly beside me, not forcing words. His silence was healing in a way words never could be. Finally, I whispered, "Michael, why are you still here? You've seen me at my weakest, my ugliest. Most people would have run." He smiled gently, his eyes warm. "Because loyalty isn't about convenience, Maggie. Real love stands when everything else falls apart. I'm here because I want to be." His words sank deep. They felt like medicine on a wound that refused to close. For the first time in years, I felt safe. But peace didn't last long. A letter arrived in the mail, sealed in an envelope with no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with scrawled handwriting. "Maggie, you don't know the whole truth. Meet me at the old church on Pine Street tomorrow at midnight, if you want answers." No signature. My stomach dropped. My first thought was David, but it couldn't be. He had walked away with Claire. Why would he reach out now? Unless there was more to the story than I realized. Michael frowned as he read over my shoulder. "This could be dangerous. Maybe you shouldn't go." But I shook my head. I've lived in the dark long enough. If there are more secrets, I need to face them. That night, sleep refused to come. My mind replayed every memory, every betrayal, every unanswered question. Who sent the letter? Why now? And what truth did they claim to hold? When midnight came, I found myself standing at the doors of the old church, the wooden cross casting a long shadow across the moonlit ground. The doors creaked open slowly, as if they had been waiting for me. And inside, someone was already there. The old church smelled of dust and candle wax. My footsteps echoed against the wooden floor as I stepped inside, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. The flickering light of a single candle revealed a shadowed figure seated at the front pew. "Hello." My voice trembled. The figure stood slowly, and as the light touched their face, my breath caught. It wasn't David. It wasn't Claire. It was Sarah, David's younger sister. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands trembling as she clutched a bundle of papers. "Sarah," I whispered. Why are you here? Did you send me that letter?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes. I couldn't keep it in anymore. You deserve to know everything." I frowned, confusion swirling inside me. What more is there to know? David betrayed me. Claire destroyed my marriage and I was left broken. Isn't that enough pain already? Sarah shook her head violently.
No, Maggie.
That's not the whole story. Claire isn't just the woman who stole David. She planned the accident. The words slammed into me like thunder. I staggered back, gripping the edge of a pew. What did you just say? Sarah shoved the papers into my hands. Police reports, insurance files, and letters David had hidden from me. Claire was jealous from the very beginning. She hated you. The night of your wedding, David wasn't just in an accident, he was lured. She knew exactly where he'd be, and she made sure of it. The coma wasn't just fate, Maggie. It was betrayal wrapped in blood. My knees nearly gave way. My wedding day, the happiest day of my life turned to horror, was not an accident at all. A scream tore from my throat, echoing in the hollow church.
No.
That can't be true. Tell me you're wrong. Please, Sarah, tell me you're wrong. But Sarah only shook her head, sobbing. I wish I was. But David knew. He suspected. That's why he wrote the confession letter. He wanted to free himself of the guilt before everything came out. Now? Claire has him under her control completely. I clutched the papers to my chest, my entire body trembling. My whole world tilted again, the ground ripping out beneath me. Sarah grabbed my shoulders. Maggie, you're in danger too. If she went this far to get David, she won't stop at anything. You need to be careful. The church doors creaked suddenly. My head whipped around. And there, standing in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight, was Claire. The candlelight flickered wildly as the heavy church doors creaked shut. Claire's heels clicked against the wooden floor, echoing like gunshots in the silence. She wore a smug smile, her eyes cold and sharp as glass. Well, well, she drawled, her voice dripping with poison. I wondered how long it would take before someone started digging where they shouldn't. Sarah froze beside me, her body trembling. Claire, you don't belong here. Just leave. Claire chuckled darkly. Leave. Sweet little Sarah, this entire mess exists because of me. Why would I leave when I've won? My hands clenched into fists, the bundle of papers shaking in my grasp. You planned it, I said, my voice low but steady.
David's accident.
His coma. You ruined my wedding day and destroyed my marriage. You nearly destroyed me. She tilted her head mockingly. Oh, Maggie, don't act so shocked. You were always too perfect, too loyal, too saintly. David didn't want perfection. He wanted passion. He wanted me. And I gave him everything you couldn't. The venom in her words stabbed at my heart, but I forced myself to stand tall. You call that love? Manipulating him, trapping him, nearly killing him? That's not love. That's obsession. Her smirk faltered just for a moment, and I knew I had struck a nerve. Sarah stepped forward, her voice shaking but brave. We know the truth, Claire. About the accident. About the insurance. About everything. You can't hide it anymore. Claire's eyes flashed with fury. In one swift motion, she pulled something from her coat pocket, a small pistol gleaming under the candlelight. My breath caught. My entire body went cold. You think you can expose me? She hissed, pointing the gun straight at Sarah. No one will believe you.
David chose me.
He's mine now. And if either of you gets in my way, you'll regret it. Sarah whimpered, and instinctively, I stepped in front of her, shielding her with my body. My voice shook, but I refused to back down. If you're so sure of your victory, why are you this desperate? Why are you pointing a gun at two women in a church? Because deep down you know the truth, David never really loved you. And he never will. Claire's face twisted with rage. She cocked the gun. The sound echoed through the church and time seemed to freeze. And then, the doors burst open. Stop! The booming voice echoed like thunder, and when I turned, my heart nearly stopped. Standing there, his face pale but his eyes blazing, was David. The moment David's voice thundered through the church, Claire's hand wavered. The pistol trembled in her grip, and for the first time since she entered, fear flickered across her face. David, she stammered, her voice losing its venom. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be resting. But David's eyes, sharp and burning with fury, cut her words in half. Resting? While you spin lies. While you hold a gun to my wife in God's house. The word wife cracked through me like lightning. My knees almost buckled, not from fear this time but from the weight of it. For the first time in years he called me his wife. Claire's lips curled, desperate, clinging. David, listen to me. She's manipulating you. No. David's roar echoed against the stone walls. It's you who's been manipulating me from the beginning. I woke up from that coma confused, broken, vulnerable, and you fed me lies about Maggie. You poisoned me against the one person who never left my side. Claire's eyes darted between us, panic rising. I saved you. Maggie wasn't enough for you. She never was. You chose me. David stepped forward, his voice steady but shaking with emotion. I didn't choose you, Claire. I pitied you. You dangled comfort in front of me when I was too weak to resist. But love? That was never you. It was always Maggie. My chest burned, tears welling in my eyes. The man I thought I had lost was standing before me, Not just physically, but in truth and heart. Claire's mask shattered. Her hand trembled so violently that the pistol nearly slipped from her grip. You can't mean that you can't. Sarah, still behind me, whispered urgently. Maggie, the gun. But before I could move, David did. With one swift motion he lunged forward, knocking Claire's arm upward. The gun went off, bang. The bullet tearing into the wooden rafters above, showering us with splinters. The pistol clattered to the ground, and Claire screamed, thrashing as David pinned her arm. I rushed forward, kicking the weapon far out of reach. You ruined everything. Claire shrieked, her voice wild, broken. If I couldn't have you, then no one should. Her cries echoed, filled with bitterness, with years of hate. And then the sound of sirens filled the night air. Red and blue lights spilled through the church windows as police stormed in. Sarah must have called them before we came. 2 officers dragged Claire up from the floor as she spat curses. Her eyes wild and locked on me. This isn't over, Maggie, she screamed. You'll regret this. He'll never forgive you. But her words were drowned out by the slamming of the church doors as she was taken away. For a long, heavy moment, silence filled the church. Only the sound of my ragged breathing and David's heartbeat pressed against mine remained. Finally he whispered, his voice breaking, Maggie, I'm so sorry. I looked into his eyes, searching, trembling. And though anger, hurt, and betrayal swirled inside me, there was also something else, hope. But could I forgive him after everything? This is my terrible story of my life I remember today.